Hello and welcome to SHOWstudio's Burberry Spring Summer 25 live panel discussion. I am Hetty, the editor here at SHOWstudio, and I'm really happy today to be joined by a group of young creatives and professionals who are all alumni of the Holiday Club, which is a free-to-attend London summer school for 16 to 25-year-olds exploring careers in the creative industries, founded by Bisoye Babalola. The reason we wanted to do this format this season is because Burberry has really been a major talking point within industry circles, especially since Daniel Lee joined as creative director in 2022. But we wanted to do a panel actually talking to the generation and the people that matter. Today, luxury brands are focusing more than ever on Gen Z, Gen Alpha, who are expected to make up a third of the luxury market through to 2030. So I want to start by asking our brilliant panel to introduce themselves. Just so you know, for those watching at home, we're going to have this spotlight that's Hassan up here is going to try his very best to get the spotlight on everyone as they're speaking, but that's kind of how it's going to work today. So Ara, can we start with you introducing yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Ara Falade. I'm from Southeast London. I'm a freelance graphic designer and all-round creative.
Daniel, over to you.
My name's Daniel Zamora. I am a freelance photographer and PA, and I live in Watford.
Let's go over to Cody.
Hi, I'm Cody O'Connor. I'm a documentary filmmaker from Waterloo in central London.
And Rhys.
I'm Rhys Sundimalt from South London, and I'm a fashion stylist and content creator.
So I wanted to start by talking about what we think of Burberry. Before we came on today, I asked everyone to tell me 3 words that they associate with Burberry and also to send me some images. So I wanted to start by talking about this. A common theme that came up was the idea of the classic and the idea of heritage, something very British. Unsurprising, you know, Burberry is a heritage British label founded in 1856. But I wanted to start by some of these references because it's very clear that Burberry's kind of been in our public consciousness since we were at quite a young age growing up in Britain. Rhys, I loved this reference. So do you want to tell us a bit why you chose this perfume?
Yeah, basically, me and my dad was talking about like perfumes and aftershave and stuff like that like a few days ago. And he did mention Burberry Touch, which he's been using as like one of his favorites. So I think that's kind of like my first memory with Burberry, I guess, and he's just been using it until now, really. So, yeah.
There's that kind of family familiarity to Burberry. It always seems that it's kind of been on the peripheral growing up. Another reference that came up through all of you three's was Burberry and kind of the public consciousness and public imagery. So Daniel chose the check, and then this also came back up for Cody. So we've got a famous British newspaper image of Daniel Westbrook. Can you also tell us a bit about this documentary photographer's image on the right as well?
Yeah.
And why you picked this?
I selected a picture from the photographer Simon Wheatley. It's just got someone like sitting at a train station wearing a Burberry cap, and I think it just feels quite like familiar to me. It's kind of like how I can imagine having seen Burberry before, like in public.
I mean, what seeing this brought up for me was that close relationship of Burberry and subculture and style in Britain. I mean, does anyone want to speak a bit about what you guys think about that idea of Burberry and subculture in Britain? Does that resonate with anyone particularly?
Yeah, I would say that Burberry definitely it's been reinterpreted based on like subroutes that's been taken in by across like Britain. Like you have, for example, football hooligan culture in London. I was growing up in Southeast London. There are quite a few football teams that it's quite a rich area for football hooliganism, and just that Burberry had that, especially when I was growing up, that sense of closely tied to this scene and this era of style. And so for me especially, this was like one of my first experiences of Burberry, and seeing it on people more in and around like my spaces, and not necessarily on like designer and like on runways, like just more on people like going to the football matches or just in the local market. So I think depending on like the, I guess, background and like area people have grown up in, Burberry can and has had a very different interpretation and meaning to people.
I mean, that check has become, that signature Burberry check is such a signature to the Burberry brand, and I think that really comes up through all these references that you guys have picked, and also then feeds in even to Rhys's reference to the perfume of why it feels kind of familiar when we have this kind of association and kind of identification with it in some way. Daniel, do you want to speak a bit about why you chose the check and the scarf particularly?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone will show you this scarf, I think, you know, they already have some history, they have some knowledge. For me, the earliest exposure was definitely, I think it was during lockdown. You know, I was just going through TikTok and I've seen people using the scarf as sort of as an accessory, as like a hood, like a makeshift hood. And that really stood out to me. And yeah.
When you guys think about the Burberry check, what does it make you think about in terms of like status? Do you think that it's uber luxurious? Does it associate for you with the idea of kind of community and subculture? I ask this because I think it's really interesting looking at this Daniela Westbrook photo, because this was in the period of kind of where the Burberry check in the brand's eyes became way too oversaturated, and they famously got caught kind of burning hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of stock because they didn't want it to perforate down through kind of lower than a really high luxury market. You know, there's a really interesting book, I don't know if you guys have read it, it's by Owen Jones, it's called Chavs, and he references this kind of demonisation of British working class, and that Burberry and the check was kind of part of that uniform, and how Burberry kind of wanted to disassociate themselves from a massive part of Britain, which actually were their main kind of consumer. But what does it bring to mind for you? Is it that it brings to mind community? Do you think, oh, that's uber luxurious, that's a really like high-end brand? What are your kind of thoughts when you see the Burberry check?
I think before, like when I was younger, I didn't really associate Burberry, I guess, with a lot of luxury, let's say. I think just being able to see it a lot around me personally. But I think it's kind of shifted now, where I think they're trying to find more of a luxurious image, and like we saw yesterday at the show with like Michael Ward and people like that, it's like nowadays it's kind of more associated to that luxury kind of feel.
What do you think? Did you have thoughts, Cody? I saw you thinking about talking about that.
Yeah, I have read the book, the Chavs book by Owen Jones, and I feel like I remember actually seeing that in like one of my teacher's classrooms in primary school.
So it's got the cap on the cover as well.
Yeah, and just kind of like that, I guess like politicization of the brand. I feel like it's kind of a bit of an introduction for me, but at the same time, like when I do see people wearing it, I think I'll always associate with like expensive, kind of like classy, because it is a luxury brand, and it's not something I've ever really been able to afford, even if it was like fake. I don't know if I'd like want to buy it, but I think I'll always think it's like quite classy.
Is aspiration then maybe an element that we associate with the check? What do we think on this side? Is aspiration something you associate with the Burberry check?
I think so, yeah. I think especially when you consider how like heavily counterfeited it was, especially like when I was growing up, you can almost attribute that to people want the Burberry look without necessarily paying Burberry prices, because it wasn't necessarily affordable. Not that it's any more affordable now, but yeah. So I think it definitely, the Nova check didn't strike me as a luxurious like piece or like a pattern. It was very much, yeah, as you said, aspirational. And I feel when I look back and think about the Burberry pieces that I did see, I can't be sure if like 90% of them were counterfeiters or the authenticity of like the Burberry pieces that I was like growing up around and seeing.
What about you, Daniel?
I find it really hard to just like put what like class I'd put it in, because when I was growing up, I'd always see it as well in like football hooligans and accessories, but
just feels integrated into kind of British.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
What else do we think? Because the word British came up through a lot of the word associations you guys sent me. What else makes Burberry feel British to you other than the Burberry check. I mean, maybe you guys want to talk a bit about why you chose your other words. Rhys, you said timeless, classy and heritage. Daniel, you said classic, British and timeless. Ara said trenches, Britishness and radical. And Cody, you said multifaceted, elegant and classy. Shall we start from Rhys at the end? What else makes you think of kind of Burberry as a British brand, and why did you choose those words to describe it?
I chose timeless, I think, just because Burberry has never really like disappeared or anything like that. Burberry's always been around, whether it's counterfeit or authentic. Like, you'll never not see Burberry, for me anyway, personally. So that's why I kind of chose timeless, was just the fact that it's never really gone, even despite their like little financial issues that they were going through as well, and like that uncertainty there, it never really faded, let's say.
Cody, what do you think? Do you want to talk a bit about the words you chose and what you think about Burberry as a British brand, why you associate these words with it?
I thought it was interesting that me and Rhys both said classy as well, because I do kind of always just think of it as like an elevated, like quite sophisticated brand. And yeah, I remember as well, like, because growing up in Waterloo, I used to go to school past like the Burberry headquarters, and I was always just like kind of intrigued of like what went on in there, viewed it as like just like I knew it was very important, but I didn't know what happened inside.
Because another one of the images that you sent me, I think I actually didn't save this for Josh, annoyingly, but was an image of a Burberry storefront. That was your one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there's also that thing of growing up in London and seeing it was very present as one of, I mean, it's kind of one of our only key remaining big luxury brands that's from Britain. So was there always kind of that awareness of Burberry as this brand? Yeah,
definitely an awareness of Burberry as like a brand and something that was kind of like important culturally for Britain. But I think as well it's like a bit weird with kind of associations of Britishness. Like, I don't know if it's actually ever been something I've been like, wow, like I love being British. It's just
okay, that's interesting. It's just that it's this idea of it being a luxury kind of brand rather than the Britishness for you. Okay, interesting. Daniel, do you want to talk a bit about the words that you chose?
Yeah, I think British, I mean, it explains it all. I mean, from, you know, down to the trench coat when it was originally designed for British officers in the army. And, you know, some of the designs on the trench coat, I mean, especially a lot of the summer ones, they had like, I think lapels, is it called? They had a lot of lapels, you know, utility, trousers, zips, pockets. So yeah, that really stood out to me.
Ara, what about you? Do you want to talk a bit about the words that you picked?
I feel the words that I picked they tie in quite nicely with each other. I think they were trenches, Britishness, and radical. In terms of trenches, I feel it is Burberry almost. Like when you see a trench on the street, you almost instantly think of Burberry. You don't have to see the Nova check. You just see a beige trench and think Burberry. And it just feels that it's an all-purpose, all-weather coat. And when you think about the weather system in the UK and you don't know whether it's going to be rainy or sunny when you get outside, I feel a trench like perfectly encapsulates like being prepared for all conditions. And then in terms of like radicalness, just the history of that trench, it being like a technological advancement at the time, of them using the gabardine instead of waxed materials. It's like that was radical and new for British, or as Daniel mentioned, British officers on the front line. And that just the trench has that history of radicalness, and especially with Daniel Lee now as creative director, I think he's been called almost like he's a radical. Like people have like mentioned, like can tie in radical with Daniel Lee. So him at the head of Burberry, it makes a lot of sense in terms of like he's like taking Burberry, I guess, in a more radical direction. And you can see with this collection, it is very much a Daniel Lee Burberry, and not necessarily. I think that may have been some of the gripes people had, that it's a Daniel Lee Burberry, not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily feel Burberry instantly. But then that ties into Daniel Lee's radicalness and his like wanting to take influences and archive pieces, but then retranslate and reinterpret them for current circumstances and the time we're in.
So did you feel like this was a radical collection? Did you feel, maybe let's look at the trench coats in this collection. Did you find them radical?
Collection, there were elements that I did feel were radical, but I didn't feel it was as strong a collection as I feel. I saw the the pre-collection, the spring-summer pre-collection. I thought there were more interesting pieces in that. And also in the fall-winter collection from the end of last year, I felt that collection resonated with me much more and felt more adventurous and playful, but also Burberry at the same time.
Why does it resonate with you? What is it about it? Is it the clothes? Is it the show space? What is it?
Very much to the clothes and just the fit of the pieces. I think I'm somebody that is very interested in how like the fabric interacts with the body of the person. And I think the styling and just the way the clothes like sat on the models during the shoot, and also the trousers and the interaction between trousers and shoes, that was like really spoke to me, because I think that's something that I pay a lot of attention to when deciding outfits, is how does like the trousers interact with the shoes, and looking at that collection, I really like enjoyed like and seeing like how the more baggier like silhouettes were like puddled on top of the shoes, but you could still have a peek of the shoe and get that sense of what the shoe was as well.
Let's have a look at Spring Summer 25, because I want to think about, you've touched a bit there on the idea of the trench coat. Spring Summer 25 was all about this idea of reintroducing icons. I do think that really what Daniel's had to do throughout his tenure at Burberry is, I don't think the idea of reinventing icons is exclusive to just this collection, because as a heritage brand, he's had to think a lot about reinventing the iconography of Burberry throughout his tenure. But if we're thinking about that idea of reinventing a British wardrobe, British icons, Burberry icons like the trench coat, what did you guys think of this collection? Rhys, maybe we could start with you with your favourite look from the show.
Well, yeah, my favourite look from the show was look 49. I liked how, well, first I liked the denim set, personally, and I like how simple it is, and almost like at a glance you wouldn't even realise it's Burberry. I quite like that, and I like the alternative chest logo, for the Burberry logo, sorry. Also, I do like the Burberry check on the belt. I think that was a nice subtle touch, and then also you can see like on each button they have the Burberry Knight as well. So I like how subtle it is, yet still Burberry.
It's interesting because that look is really playing with different iconographies of Burberry history. What did you guys think about this look? Did you like it? For those watching at home, it's this one here. Sorry, I've made life hard putting this on a slideshow. It's we'll just pull it up here so that it's really clear for everyone. Sorry, Josh, I've made your life more difficult than easy here. Here we go. What did you guys think about this look?
I think it was definitely one of my favourite looks.
Why?
Like I said again, it reflects British, you know. I mean, it looks like formal British, like military wear. You can see like the patch on his left. But yeah, like Rhys said, also the belt. I really like the thin. It looks like a thinner belt than like usual. You know, it's not too shouty, but yeah, it fits in really nice.
I mean, there's something quite contemporary about the loose fit of this silhouette, which I think is interesting, just thinking about what you were saying about liking the autumn-winter collection, that you like the baggy fits. Maybe that's something you might wear or see your friends wearing. Is that perhaps something you like in this look? Why do you like, or maybe you don't like this look?
No, I think I did. I initially picked out look 49 as a look I liked as well. I think the whole collection was quite military coded as well. But I think really, for me, the standout in this fit was the jacket itself, and just the way it sits on the model, and like the shape of it. And as Daniel mentioned, it is very inspired, like, I think, from 20s military formal wear. So seeing that and how it's like reinterpreted for our generation almost, because I think we're very much more concerned with like proportion and fit of clothes than like any generation before. So seeing that and like how it was being reinterpreted to kind of speak to us, I really enjoyed that, and I loved like this fit as a whole. And then obviously I think Rhys and Daniel have both mentioned you have the hint of the Nova check on the belt as well. So for those people who feel like, oh, this is not just screaming Burberry to me, you do have like your odes to the classic Burberry with the house check on the belt. So yeah, I still do very much like this fit. So yeah.
Cody, what do you think about this look? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this one because I feel like I can really see someone just wearing it, like kind of feels very like ready to wear, like you could just see someone, you know, especially with the, I think the belt, I really like that like subtle accent. There was another look, the all orange one, which had like a similar kind of subtle belt going on.
It was this 38, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you guys, when you're looking at a runway show like this in a collection, especially if we think about Burberry specifically, do you enjoy more seeing looks that you feel like are wearable and that you could see yourself wearing, or do you like seeing something more kind of quote unquote editorial, which is more kind of something that's perhaps runway only and made for a big fashion shoot or something? What do you guys think? I mean, maybe that's different when we're thinking about Burberry, which we feel like fits more into our lives. What do you guys think? Because it just feels like that's coming up from that look we were looking at, that you guys like it because there's a wearability and a sensibility to it.
I think there's like a balance, right? It's like for a fashion show, you want to see, well, for me personally, you want to see like art. You want to see like a lot of creativity and things like that. So it's like there is a balance there, because then at the same time, which is why I picked 49, is that a bit like what Cody said, I could imagine someone wearing that like day to day, not necessarily day to day, but like if they're going out, if I'm in, let's say, central London, for example, I could see that outfit or pieces of that outfit there. Whereas like I wouldn't necessarily see those other pieces day to day. So I think it's a balance between both.
Cody, maybe let's have a look at your favourite look, which is also my favourite look, because I think this is an interesting one to look at, because it's kind of a balance of wearable and something more dressed up. Can you remember what look number it was? We do have it on the, we'll just check. It's the Lily Donaldson look. Is it Lily? I can't remember.
Sparkly dress.
Yeah. Where are we? There we go, look 12. So this is kind of your classic kind of Parker jacket, but then done with this kind of baby blue sparkly dress and heels. Why did you pick this one as your favourite look?
Honestly, the reason why I like this one the most is just because I feel like it feels like quite authentic to me, because I can imagine someone like, you know, like a girl at a party, like gets a bit cold, whatever, like throws on like a big jacket, or, you know, like you're just going out and you want to look good, but it's like absolutely freezing. So I think that's kind of what I liked about it. Like it felt a bit quite like authentic.
Yeah, not too pretentious.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about this look? Did you like it? Let's start, Daniel.
Yeah, I really liked it. I like Cody said, it looks like someone, you know, just left a nice dinner party and just thrown on a jacket. I think the colours really go well as well. I really like the sort of like fur on the hood. I know, yeah.
What do you think, Ara? Do you like this?
I think I understand the styling aspect of it, in terms of, as Cody mentioned, that whole feeling familiar in terms of throwing on a parka when going out with an evening dress. But just the parka in general, I wasn't too moved by it. Burberry and parkas just don't, obviously, I don't think are something that comes to mind naturally, one. And it didn't feel, I guess, it didn't feel like, I guess, radical enough, or like interesting enough, or thought-provoking that, or for me to be like, okay, this is a really good look. I think there were times that she walked along the runway without the coat, and I thought the dress is a lovely dress, like by itself. But the parka on top, whilst I understand like the styling direction of it, the parka itself just doesn't, as a piece, I'm not really sure about it.
Yeah. So as a kind of brand, you'd like to see, you know, their bread and butter has always been outerwear, and you'd like to see that being pushed further. You'd find that interesting. Okay, cool. Daniel, let's have a look at your favourite look. Can you remember we'll just see what it was. Yeah. This one. So a full kind of Burberry check number. Yeah. I mean, we've spoken a lot about the check, but why this look? Is it kind of everything we've talked about so far, or is there anything kind of...
I think I'm kind of repeating myself, but it definitely is giving like utility. When I think of, you know, wearing clothes and British and that sort of stuff, I definitely think, you know, like Gore-Tex, waterproof, that sort of stuff. I think the design of the whole whole fit, you know, is just really nice. I mean, the oversized jacket kind of on him really fits nicely. The trousers are really nice.
Is it something that you'd want to wear?
Yeah, I mean, going back to your other point, when I think of like runway shows, I really do think of clothes, you know, that are in my reach, you know, that I can wear and what it would look like on me. And yeah.
Okay, cool. Alright, let's have a look at your favourite look.
Just before, I think I wanted to mention with that look as well, it reminds me very much of, I don't know if anyone's seen like some Umbro, because I think Umbro recently completely changed like the creative direction over there. And it reminds me of one of these the new Umbro jackets. I've seen like a pullover hood jacket with like an attachable hood on the inside of it. Yeah. So yeah, it was quite cool. Like that also felt familiar as well. So yeah, it was a very familiar look. Yeah, I liked it.
Okay, nice. Right, let's have a look at Ara's key look, which you picked. This one. So why did you pick this? Very strong print in it, kind of like a camouflage print.
Yeah, it's the camouflage print. I think it's a blend of. It feels like the leopard print trend that's like going on right now, but also like a digital camo in a way. And I feel that makes a lot of sense for Burberry when you think about their history and them being used by British military. I think a camo but leopard print makes a lot of sense for them. So not only are they tapping into the current, I guess, zeitgeist and like things that are like current right now for our generation, but they're then reinterpreting it for them and making it unique to them. It's not just, oh, Burberry did a leopard print trench. They took leopard print or inspiration or used it as a reference, but then made it into like a digital camo. So I think that was pretty cool as well. And I think in 2015 as well, I think I saw some articles regarding Burberry being like one of the like first like digital like forward brands as well. So a digital camo makes a lot of sense for them. So yeah, I really did like this look.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a massive kind of metaverse first strategy over the past few years. They really kind of were forerunners in that. Kind of to your point, we had a question from the public from Kello K. Jane saying, who is Burberry appealing to? And I'd love to know who you guys think Burberry is appealing to. I mean, it's really interesting to hear what appeals to you from the collection, but who do you think this kind of would appeal to, this collection? Who do you think it's kind of, would it appeal to your mates? Does it, you know, as a whole collection, does it appeal to you? Who do you think it's appealing to? Who wants to kick off? Daniel?
I think this new collection it's ideally aiming towards the younger crowd, trying to get the younger generation more, you know, interested. Because I think, well, most of us, when we think of Burberry, I think, you know, higher ups, you know, and kind of out of touch for us to get really, because it's, you know, expensive. But yeah, I think he's really, especially like the set design as well, I think it's really like simplistic and almost like chowdy-ish in my personal preference. But yeah, I think he's really trying to get more of the younger crowd interested.
Why do you think it's important to do that?
I mean, we are the next generation, really, isn't it? I mean, I think if he wants to make this brand live as long as it has, I think he definitely has to incorporate the younger generation. Yeah,
you've got to kind of build that's, you know, that interest that all of us have been talking about in terms of how prevalent it was growing up. You've got to create that same impact for that generation now. Ara, who do you think this is appealing to? Would it appeal to?
I would definitely second that in terms of it appeals to our generation, the newer generation, in terms of the pieces and like the construction and how things fit and look on the models. But I think I've seen a lot of discourse online regarding how they're, I guess, stepping away from, well, not stepping away, but there are less of their legacy pieces, so in terms of like new trenches every season. And I think people who tend to be more, I guess, aggrieved or annoyed by that are the older generations who typically buy like a Burberry trench and then that like stays in the family for such a long time, like it's passed down from generation to generation. I think our generation now are definitely more focused on interesting pieces, and because I think we all realize and recognize there are like a million Burberry trenches out there right now that we can buy secondhand, we can buy vintage, that we don't necessarily need a new Burberry trench every year, that we would rather like a Burberry trench dress instead, something that is unique to a season or unique to a creative director. So I would definitely agree with Daniel and say that, yeah, it's appealing to our generation in terms of look, but however, in terms of pricing, maybe not so much. I think over the last few years, their prices have steadily increased, and it is, I guess there's less, the entry point almost for like just simple accessories, when you think like scarves or bags, for example, are higher than what they once were, and it makes it more difficult for people to get into a brand like Burberry, and maybe as a result of that, things like counterfeiting or bootleg culture will come back. But in terms of look, definitely Burberry appeals to our generation, but pricing, not so much.
Maybe what's interesting as well, thinking about this show and thinking about that idea that it is directed in some respect to the younger generation, is, you know, and thinking about like the trench coat and those classics, and maybe, you know, people are less interested in needing a new trench coat every year, but maybe, you know, what the styling is doing in this collection is showing you how you can mix those Burberry classics into your wardrobe. So I think like that Lily Donaldson looks a great example of that, with, you know, and there's lots of looks in this collection which are kind of, you know, you're saying, you know, the utility pants, the looser silhouettes, but then put together with a Burberry classic. So maybe there's an element to this as well in terms of strategy, which is, you know, not necessarily expecting a younger generation who don't have the wallet for Burberry to be able to afford this whole look, but to think, you know, if I invest in a key Burberry trench, I can then mix it into those cargo pants I already have in my wardrobe. Maybe there's something there as well. Okay, let's go over to this side and think a bit about who you think Burberry's appealing to in this collection. Cody, what do you think?
I would say, for me, I feel like this collection is really trying to appeal to kind of like inner city London youth scene. Yeah, I think as well it's kind of like reflecting, like, kind of reminds me of like different types of like young people you might meet, like from different backgrounds. Kind of reminds me of like Dalston. I don't know why.
That's nice. So you get like a sense of characters in this collection.
Yeah, I think so. And even with like the kind of fur trim jackets, like it does remind me a bit of just like stuff I see on Depop, and yeah, stuff that I see people wearing as well. But it does kind of interest me like who they kind of want to get to buy into it. Like, is it people that have money that want to show that, or like what kind of associations people are kind of interested in getting from it, or from wearing the clothes?
Okay, interesting. I mean, Rhys, you said at the beginning that you always had this awareness of Burberry because of people around you growing up. When you're looking at this collection, do you agree with Cody? Do you see kind of characters of people that you recognise from around you in London, or not? Do you recognise, what do you think?
A little bit, yeah. I think now, especially with this collection, it's definitely gone back to that kind of feel.
Yeah.
I feel like before going from collection to collection, I feel like Burberry itself is very mature and then resonates to a more mature audience. So I feel like coming back to this collection now, we're seeing a bit less of, let's say, the trench coat, or how, like a bit like what you said, like how can you dress the trench coat in other ways and things like that. So I feel like it's definitely now appealing to more of a younger generation, or my generation, where we can now tap into Burberry without necessarily getting like more, let's say, matured pieces such as a trench coat. We can instead get the denim set, for example, where it's a bit more wearable for me personally and things like that.
I want to talk now a bit about how Burberry is appealing to people, and whether it appeals to you in terms of staging a fashion show, people that they've got wearing the brand here. We can see Lennon Gallagher. At the show, we had people like Skepta, we had Declan Rice, the footballer. Is watching a fashion show important to you in terms of, like, does it kind of perforate, like, and make a brand more relevant or interesting to you, or is it, you know, those guests at the show and who's wearing it? Is that what captures your attention? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think, so yesterday I did see a couple of familiar faces. Like you said, Declan Rice, Skepta, there was, Barry Keoghan. There was also, like, a lot of, like, the youth culture as well, like Sloan as well. There was Gabriel Moses. So I think who they invite, you know, I think they necessarily want, you know, the talent to, you know, like, kind of repost, like, you know, we're here, spread the awareness. And I think that really does widen the.
Do you take notice of that though? Like when that comes up on your feed, does that say to you, "Oh, Burberry's cool. Like that person's wearing it." Does that like touch you?
To be honest, it depends who the person is and how they style it, and their attitude towards things.
Are Burberry picking people that are resonating with you?
Yeah, I think they are. The fact that they had Sloan there, I mean, I think it says it all, to be honest.
Ara, what do you think about the show? I mean, we were talking a bit about the show space before we came on. Does like a fashion show important to you in terms of how you think about brands that you might want to engage with? What did you think about this show in the space? Because you had thoughts about the artist Gary Hume, didn't you?
Yeah, I think in terms of shows, they do resonate. I think, but it's more so the final images you get from the show. So I think an example of was like the Babalola show yesterday, and we saw like the images coming out of there, and like just seeing like what was going on. It felt quite like electric. You can just feel the energy through those videos. Whereas with the pictures and behind the scenes we've seen from Burberry, it there wasn't much of a vibe there. It felt quite clinical almost in a sense. And I guess that is somewhat ironic when I think I read the artist Gary Hume said he took inspiration from Hospital Doors with the installation that we put out on the National Theatre for the show. But it just, as I think you also mentioned earlier as well, the music, it didn't contribute to any sense of vibe or feel or great feeling at the show. It just felt, this is a show, look at these pieces kind of thing. And I feel if that's the route brands are going to go down, then there's not really a point in doing shows. Rather just take pictures of take editorial pictures and release those pictures and do a whole show and not have much going on other than XYZ was here and we had these names at the show. I think a lot of people probably more remember the fits of the celebrities that were at the show than the fits that we saw on the runway itself, which is quite telling and needs to be paid attention to when you are a heritage British brand, that people aren't necessarily paying attention to what you're putting out now, but more so how other people have interpreted pieces you've put out previously.
Yeah, I mean, because it is massively important. I mean, I remember Burberry being so kind of one of my earliest memories of fashion, just seeing images of when Christopher Bailey did all the shows in the tents and he'd have musicians and bands playing, and then I remember seeing those campaigns around London and it would always be kind of indie boy band musicians in the campaigns, and that whole thread of how you communicate and talk about a show can have such a lasting impact on your brand image. And Daniel Lee was doing the shows in kind of a tent format, and this is the first show that he's done for Burberry which hasn't been inside this idea of kind of a tent. As you mentioned, he did it at the National Theatre. Gary Hume did the set design. I'd love to know what everyone else thought about the set design in the space, and would you remember this show in your mind as kind of an image? Let's start this side. Rhys, what do you think?
I feel like it's just a bit like what Daniel and Ara was saying in terms of there was a lot of space, there wasn't a lot of feel. When you look at other shows and when you look at the final images from them, it's you can almost feel the energy, you can feel the surroundings, you can feel the set. But in this case, just from the final images and stuff like that, it's almost, there doesn't bring any emotion, doesn't really bring any feeling, and I think that's quite telling, especially for a brand that's I guess trying to find more of a British image and using people like Declan Rice, Sloan, Gabriel Moses to come to their shows, and it's telling when for us we almost notice those people more than the actual runway show and the things around it. So definitely kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's too subtle because the set design by Gary was made out of tarpaulin, which is meant to be kind of a reference to gabardine, the fabric for the trench coats that Burberry invented. And Daniel was talking about stage, about this idea of the cutout linking to the pattern cutting, but maybe it's maybe we need something more literal and, as you're saying, energetic to create that kind of connection to watching this show.
Yeah.
Cody, what did you think about the show space and the show as a whole, and whether you felt connected to it?
I would say, first of all, I really liked that they had it at the National Theatre, just because somewhere that I've always like kind of grown up like going to is like a big, you know, like free public venue in London. So yeah, I liked that. And then I also liked that they had like a kind of almost like mini celebrity runway on the live stream where you could see everyone as they were arriving. And that like, I just thought that was quite funny because yeah, it's true, like you're saying, it almost is like as interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys, I mean, I asked you guys to make sure you watched this stream while it was happening so that we could talk about it today, but typically, would you guys tune in and watch a runway show live on YouTube? Would you? Yeah? And if so, what brands would you do it for?
I think it's for the really mainstream brands, really. I mean, I'm not really educated in like the lower, like for example, like Labrum. I know they had theirs in Arsenal, but I mean, I feel like for me, it's just the big names. You know, I think when big fashion brands come together and put this sort of runways on, I think, you know, it's interesting to see what they have.
And you enjoy watching it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something, you know, you see every day, you know, so, I mean, to just, you know, have a nice and, you know, watch it for once, I think it really shows, yeah.
All right, what about you? Would you usually sit down and watch a runway show on a live
Not
stream?
typically, but I definitely feel that I would watch a show if, for example, that I've seen something or heard something about the show, like before the show, that as like maybe is interesting. I want to like look out for. So, for example, the Tolu Coco show, I heard that the set was going to be like inspired by like her father's living room, and so that was like obviously with I think her having Nigerian heritage as well. That was like going to be quite interesting for me to see. So that was a show that I wanted to like go and see and look at the pieces and like and also the set, but mainly to see, understand like, okay, this is like her interpretation of her father's living room, and like what was that like for her. And so definitely, like if I like hear murmurs of something from a show that might be interesting to see, I'll go and watch it. But typically, I don't find myself watching shows.
Okay. This side, what do you both think? Would you usually sit down and stream a fashion show?
For me, not necessarily. But I do like the idea of kind of going back to it once you see like highlights. And again, for me, it's like knowing certain people's there. Like if I'm interested in those, let's say, celebrities or people of influence, then I kind of would then tap into what they're looking at or what they're in or where they're at. So I think for me, it's like looking back at the highlights, like knowing that people like Gabriel Moses are people that I kind of look up to or enjoy their content and things like that. Naturally, then I'll go to look at the fashion show because they were there, but I wouldn't necessarily choose to stream a fashion show just because.
Yeah. Cody, what about you?
Yeah, it's the same for me, to be honest. Like, I don't think I've ever actually watched a live stream of a fashion show before. It's always kind of like on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, I'll see all the publications post everything on my feed, and then maybe after that, if I see someone that I follow, like a celebrity, post something, I might end up like looking into it a bit more.
Okay. No, it's interesting to know. I want to finish by asking everyone, kind of looking at this Spring/Summer 25 collection, thinking about everything we've spoken about, like what Burberry means, has meant to us. Is Burberry a brand that you would save up to invest in, or maybe buy secondhand, buy if things were more entry price levels? I mean, Ari, you mentioned, they've been really hiking up their prices. I think for context, it's quite interesting to know that they've got a new CEO, Joshua Schulman, who was previously at Coach and Michael Kors, who are more of these, they've kind of changed their strategy and are more these kind of mid-level entry luxury brands and have done really well in terms of targeting a younger consumer, bringing them in terms of accessories. So I do think it will be interesting to see what happens to Burberry's price points and their accessories offerings over the next few months. But to close, I'd love to know whether it's a brand that you would think about investing in, whether it's one of those trench coats, signature pieces, or something maybe more kind of radical, as we've spoken about. Let's start from this end, from Ara, and then we'll work our way down.
Okay. In terms of purchasing pieces directly from them, I don't see it as a brand that I will do. But I think currently with Daniel Lee as the creative director, I do still see it as a brand that I will look to like their pieces maybe for inspiration for other things that I might buy. Like I'll see some of their looks and see how maybe I could replicate that by buying other pieces that maybe are one more coded for my wardrobe or are just at a much like more financially viable price point for me. But yeah, definitely, whilst Daniel Lee is still in charge, I definitely will be paying attention and like seeing like what looks they're putting out and what pieces they're putting out for inspiration purposes. Yeah.
Cool. Daniel, what about you?
I think it's really hard to say. I mean, I think in the next coming maybe years, I feel like they would become just under the barrier of luxury. But personally, I mean, I love their stuff. I feel like it is really, really expensive, but like, I feel like if I'm going to buy something, I don't think it's going to be more like something like this, you know. I think it's going to be more of accessories. Like, I really like their scarf, and it's got a hood built in. I really like that.
it, you know, if you're going to invest, that you want it to look like Burberry? Like, is that something that appeals? I think, again, going back to this check we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the scarf, I mean, you know, most people will probably buy it because of the iconic design. But I'm really not too bothered. I mean, if I like the clothing and it fits nice, then, you know.
I just think it's interesting because I think something that's come up as well is that those Burberry, there's an appeal to it being Burberry, but it also being a signature Burberry, whether that's the check or the kind of trench coat. And maybe, you know, Ara saying that they were lacking kind of a radicalness in some of the silhouettes, that maybe that's something that the brand can focus on, is making a new kind of radical silhouette which feels visually Burberry. Cody, is Burberry something that you would ever consider investing in or kind of having a special piece from?
I think for me, it's one of those ones where, like, if I went into a vintage shop and I found something and, like, obviously I liked it and it was within my price range, then I would think about buying it. But I don't think I would ever really, like, I'm not that much of a luxury consumer, so I don't think I would ever, like, go on the website and actually buy something from there.
Is it something that, you know, talking about buying secondhand, that, you know, the secondhand market is so big at the moment, is Burberry anything sometimes that you would think about, you know, going on Depop and searching up, and would you ever search it out?
Yeah, I think there was definitely one point, like, maybe in, like, 2017, 2018, when I was like kind of getting vaguely into it, and I think I kept seeing everyone posting like the bikini or something like that. But I would say, yeah, mostly now I just see the scarf, the trench coats, to be honest, and that's more like, if I was going to buy anything, it would probably be one of those core items.
Okay, nice. Rhys, what about you?
I think kind of the same as Cody, in a sense of, I wouldn't necessarily just have an abundance of Burberry items. Like, again, with price point, and also just not really being my style, let's say. But I think I definitely would go for like those timeless pieces, like a trench. Like, you can't go wrong with having one of those in your wardrobe, for example. It's such a staple. So it's like things like the trench, the scarf, like Daniel was talking about. It's like stuff like that I would think I would invest in. But in terms of like some of the other pieces that they do have, like the cardigans and just the odd few T-shirts and things like that, I don't think I would necessarily be interested in. So yeah.
It feels like the kind of feeling is that Burberry is something that you integrate into your wardrobe. It's not necessarily a full look, whole style and thing. It's kind of elements. And maybe that also comes into that British way of dressing, which can be a very subcultural uniform, but it can also today be a mishmash of things.
Yeah, I feel like, especially when buying off these sort of like higher class brands, I think it's definitely much of a case of like, you know, you're saving up for a statement piece. You know, it's nothing like getting like a regular polo shirt. I mean, for me, you know, I'm not really got the money to do that, but I mean, yeah, I feel like it is very much of like you're saving up for a statement piece, not anything, you know, that's on a day-to-day like casual wear.
Okay, so interesting to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for watching at home. We will see you soon for our next panel. Leave any thoughts in the comments below, and yeah, we will see you next time. Bye.